Well, a Sky Cricket podcast coming from Pakistan because an ICC global event has returned to the country for the first time in, well, almost 30 years. You have to go right back to 1996, the dread days of England under my captaincy, for the last time that a global event was held here in Pakistan. It seems a long, long time ago. But there's a great sense of anticipation and joy, I suppose, here in the country that a global event has returned for the first time. Have you sensed that, Nas? Just to the context, I have to apologise. I'm full of a cold, by the way. But you're in Rawalpindi, and I'm in Lahore. You drove down to Rawalpindi for today's game. How long was the drive? And if it was a long one, who had the misfortune of sitting in the car with you for about 5 hours?
The drive was 5 hours. We stopped off at a nice service station, which was lovely. I had Matthew Hayden as my passenger with me, which is exactly what you need after Australia have put on a record run chase against England in an ICC global event. So he was in the back. It was quite nice, actually. We thought he loves his crops, and he was asking the driver all about what crops and what was being grown in the fields and everything. It was a very informative journey. I just kept the subject off cricket, to be honest. Going to your original point, have I felt the love of the tournament here in Pakistan and the vibe? I did probably till last night, and got here to watch the end of the India-Pakistan game, and you know that they've played two, lost two. They've waited all that time for this tournament, and if results go against them today, I'm doing the New Zealand-Bangladesh game here
Done
today in Rawalpindi. If New Zealand win, that's this group basically done. Apart from who comes first or second, New Zealand or India.
Yeah, in my hotel here in Lahore, there's a massive, as you know, because you were there the other night. There's a massive, giant television in the foyer, which I can't think particularly thrilled the England players when they came down for breakfast the day after their shelling by Australia, because they were showing the highlights of that game. But last night for the Pakistan-India game, there were loads of people milling around watching the cricket. All the waiters and the staff here at the hotel kind of down tools for a bit and were watching. And then when it became clear that Kohli and India were going to win very comfortably, they all drifted away rather disconsolately. So we've had 5 games really, 3 here in Pakistan, 2 in Dubai. What are your general impressions so far? I mean, there seem to be higher scores here in Pakistan than in Dubai, you would say.
Yeah, I mean, as ever, I've travelled more than you, so I did Dubai.
I did Dubai as well,
and I did those. Sorry, yes, I did Lahore. I think it needed the England-Australia game, to be honest. I think that's been the one close game in the close-ish game in the tournament. There've been a few one-sided games. Last night was very one-sided again, but definitely there's been a difference in conditions between Dubai and here. We turned up at Dubai and we looked from above, didn't we? We went up in the media center and you looked down and you went, "Oof, that looks a bit dry, that surface out there." And they've had those 2 tournaments, the Women's T20 World Cup and the IL T20 as well. So those pitches are tired, and you think 250, 270 is around about par, whereas here in Pakistan, conditions have been different from venue to venue. First game here in Rawalpindi today, but Karachi looks around about a 300 pitch, a little bit drier, but Lahore just looks an absolute road, to be honest. 350. In fact, the other day, I was on comms with Simon Dool, first of the run chase, and I turned to Dooley and went, after England had got 351, and I turned to Dooley and went, "Which dressing room would you rather be in?" And I had to almost stop myself and catch myself there and go, "You've got 351, and I'm asking which dressing room would you rather be in?" Because there was just a feeling that, 351's good, but with the dew coming down and on this pitch, it may not be enough. So I like the change in the difference in conditions and the difference in venues. I just like a few closer games, to be honest.
So your predictions for the tournament then, how are they going? You had England to get out of their group. You had
Yeah, they're still in the
Zaman
group.
to be
They're
the
still
top
there.
run scorer and Arshdeep Singh to be top
That's a
wicket
lie.
taker. How are all those predictions going?
You you used that on air the other day, and you knew it was a lie. So my lawyer will be in touch. I had Shubman Gill as the leading run scorer, right? Which I think is quite a good bet at the moment. Watching Shubman bat, I had Arshdeep Singh as the leading wicket taker. He's not played a game, and I had the one to watch was Fakhar Zaman, who just about played in the first game and then left the tournament. So I've heard you've had like 4 different sides to win it. On this podcast, you said South
Yeah.
Africa. Then I heard you doing something, you said India. Then you did New Zealand.
Well,
Where are you at the
if you spread
moment?
them around enough, you'll be right in the end, like a stop clock. I also had my top run scorer to be Heinrich Klaassen, who's not yet played. He missed the first game with injury.
Excellent.
Should we get to the weekend's games then? I mean, the two big ones really, or certainly from our perspective, since it's a Sky Cricket podcast, we concentrate on England mainly. But that game against Australia, which was a high-scoring game, a really thunderous game as far as the batting was concerned, more than 700 runs in the day. I watched Josh Butler right at the end. You were doing the kind of closing stuff for the channel, and I was stood to one side because I'd done the captain's thing for telly, and Josh Butler had done the telly, had done the written media, all the post-match captain's duties, and then I saw him walk. He had to walk the length of the pitch back to the changing room, and he was on his own and head down, and he looked like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I had the sense that he was pretty disconsolate because for a lot of that game, England did a lot of things well, didn't they? They'd been criticised heavily in India for the tempo of their batting, but they got that right for a lot of the game. You know, Duckett got the 100; they were looking for hundreds. Had a good partnership with Root in the middle where their tempo was good. And they were all set for probably a score nearer 400 than 350. It didn't quite materialise. And then Australia won at a canter, really, in the end.
Yeah, I mean, he did look like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. And, you know, that comment from Brendan McCullum asking him to smile a bit more. I said on this podcast a month ago, you're only smiling if you're winning, to be honest. And it does wear you down. And especially results like that. I go back to the games I think about are not the games where we didn't play particularly well and we got hammered. And there were many of those. But I think of the NatWest final where we got 300 or plus and we lost. I think of the game in the World Cup at Port Elizabeth against Australia, where we should have won and we lost. And they're the games that really hurt, where you actually play a lot of good cricket and you come up on the wrong side. And your points are very valid. For a lot of that game, England did some very, very fine things. I thought they got their tempo right. I think they made up for all the mistakes that they'd made in India, where they went too hard, too early. Duckett went on and got that big 100. Root played nicely. They had their two best players of spin in when spin came on. And they bowled well with the new ball with Wood and Archer. The difference for me, obviously, is not finishing in innings. When you're playing Australia, even an Australian side missing the players that they were, you have to switch on for 100 overs. And they didn't finish that innings off. So Brooke, Livingston, Butler, and down the order, they should have got 380. I think Morgan's vintage side would have actually been targeting 400 on that sort of surface. And then the fielding, you think of Carey's two magnificent catches compared to obviously Jofra Archer dropping one in the deep. And also England maybe overdoing the short pitch stuff. I think, you know, Josh Inglis is a very fine player of the short ball. And he got a lot of pull shots away and he got a lot of cut shots away. Ben Duckett said to us on interview at the end, they seemed to cut the ball more than we did. So I don't think they got everything right. And when you're like that against Australia, they absolutely pounce on you. It was a magnificent Carey-Inglis partnership was absolutely magnificent. And it set it up for their finisher, Maxwell, and he came in and played like he does.
We'll go back and talk a little bit more about Inglis and Carey and one or two things there. But what about England's batting order? I mean, they all Eric Morecambe gag when he was playing the piano rather badly, and he said, "I'm playing all the right notes, but just in all the wrong order. I mean, you would prefer to see Josh Buttler coming in at higher up in the order, wouldn't you?
I would, simply, especially on a surface like that. You know, if he bats at 3 or 4, but say 3, he could get out for 10 or 20, whatever he got the other day. He could do the similar thing. But if he gets in, Josh Buttler at his best, one of England's, if not England's greatest batter on that surface, could go on and get 150, could play the innings that Inglis did or whatever, because he's so talented. If on a pitch like that, England's best white ball player of all time is sitting and watching 40 overs of cricket from the pavilion as an opposition captain, I'm thinking that's good. I'm enjoying that, really. So the damage that Buttler could do compared to what he can do at the end, I think I would have him higher up the order. And also for Joss, this is a defining tournament now for Buttler. If they don't get through the qualification here, the group stages, he could well lose his job. And for that reason, if I'm Joss Buttler, I'm thinking my job's hanging on the line here. I have to have a massive impact on this game, on this tournament right now, as opposed to at the end of the tournament wishing, why didn't I promote myself and give it a go? They see it differently. They see him as the finisher.
And the other side,
what do you think?
I'd like to see him a bit higher. I was going to say the other side of that coin is the man who they have put at 3, Jamie Smith, who's obviously a really good young player, but he's somebody who is learning on the job in that position. I mean, you come into a major global tournament, and ideally you want to come in with your team settled and having played with people in those positions so that they kind of know their roles, they know exactly what they're about, and the team's working like clockwork. And in a way, the fact that that was the first time that Jamie Smith has batted at 3 in an ODI tells you a little bit, doesn't it? Both about how highly they rate him, but also about how disjointed their preparation has been. Obviously, he was injured a bit in that series in India. But I think that is another issue, and it's a broader issue, this, for a lot of England's best younger players, that they are getting very little exposure to 50-over cricket. Jamie Smith played 7 ODIs before that game, and I don't think he played for Surrey in 50-over cricket since 21, I think, because obviously he'd been playing in the 100. And I do think it's a different game. I mean, I don't want to overplay this, but I do think the rhythms of 50-over cricket are very different. It's a fascinating game because it is not just glorified T20, I don't think, where you just come out all guns blazing. You have to be a bit smarter, and it's a bit more of a nuanced game. And if you don't get any practice at learning that tempo, and you're having to come in to the game kind of learning as you're going along, I'm not sure that's entirely ideal.
It's not, and I mean, England have done that historically. I did it for Nick Knight, didn't I, in a World Cup or whatever? But they've done it with Gary Balance in a World Cup or whatever. Sudden last-minute change in the batting lineup. It's historically what England have done. One thing I will say, and I think you agree with this, if they're going to do it with a talented young lad, Jamie Smith is that.
Yes, I mean, it reflects what they clearly think about him, and we've seen enough to know that he may well make a great success of that position, but. You're flying by the seat of your pants a little bit, aren't you? You don't really know.
No, absolutely. So I think it reflects on what they think of him as a cricketer. But also, I think your point is valid between 20 overs and 50 overs. We had Joss on a couple of weeks ago, and Joss Buttler said actually a lot of that Morgan era side, and him in particular, learnt in Pro 40 cricket. I thought that was a really good point, that the difference between 40 overs, especially what they were trying to do, as in just go harder. It is easier if you've been brought up on 40 overs just to go harder, that you're thinking 10 more overs we go harder, as opposed going from 20 overs to 50. You can see it in Phil Salt's batting. Phil Salt sees it as a 20-over game when in fact he has got a lot more time and he could just give himself a bit more time. Can I just ask you about the balance of the England side? And both sides had similar balance. Let's be honest, Maxwell at 7, 4 frontline bowlers, and then some mix and matching from both sides. What do you think about England's balance to their side? Because they have 4 frontline bowlers, but 2 of those are Wood and Archer, who have a long history of injuries. And you can see Archer Jofra the other day, because he hasn't bowled 10 overs that much over the last few years, going off with cramp. I think it was cramp pretty early on, and didn't come back particularly well after that. Is it okay for England to go in with just 4 bowlers? Because Livingston and Root did pretty well, didn't
I
they?
thought the balance was the right one. I kind of think, what was I saying before the game? How did I see it before the game? And if I was asked to pick a side before that match, I would have picked the same balance of the side. Might not have had things in exactly the same order, but I would pick that balance with a batting heavy lineup and 4 bowlers, and Root and Livingston as the 5th bowler. And as you say, Root and Livingston did pretty well. They both went for less than 7 and over, didn't they? And 1 wicket to Liam Livingston. So I didn't think that's where the problem lay. I think 2 issues for England in that game. One, they didn't quite get enough runs at the end. They should have been closer to 400 than 350. Brook getting out, Butler getting out just as he was going. Livingston, the fireworks didn't come from him. And they were all set for 380 and didn't quite get there. And the issue, I don't think, is not with the balance, but it's the nature of England's bowling attack. They are very, very all in on pace, obviously with Archer and Wood and Carse as well. And if you contrast that to Australia, for example, they had a very different looking bowling lineup, didn't they? Australia, obviously missing some big guns there, missing Cummins, Stark and Hazelwood. But take somebody like Nathan Ellis, who's a bit of a white ball specialist. He's probably not getting a look in with England because they wouldn't see him maybe as quite quick enough. But I think in the middle phase of that innings, unless you've got your gun spinners like Zampa and Rashid, who you're looking to pick up the odd wicket and take the odd wicket to slow things down. But seam bowlers in that phase, it's often a defensive role, isn't it? And your seam bowlers are quite clever and quite nuanced and quite skillful in taking pace off the ball and bowling 3 or 4 different slow balls. We had on television, didn't we, Nathan Ellis's slow balls, which were cutters and back of the hand and very kind of skillful, but in a more defensive role. And I think that is the issue for England, or that is the question for England, whether the type of bowlers they're all in on suit the style of cricket that is played in the subcontinent in particular, where pitches might get slower. The dew came down in Lahore and actually the ball skipped on fine. But a lot of the pitches here will hold up a bit and you'll have to take pace off the ball. And so it's the type and nature of the bowling, I think, that might be the issue for England. I mean, I watched, so it was a difficult evening, wasn't it? It was a difficult evening for Bryden Carse. He was very expensive. And I just thought he didn't bowl well that night. He's normally a very, very good line bowler, running it back onto about off stump, and his lines were all off and he got punished. I was a bit worried looking at Jofra when he came back. He came back at a critical time. I think his last 5 overs went for 49. And, if you think of, I was thinking in my mind's eye of Jofra pre-injury, that high arm, that snap of the wrist. And it just didn't quite look like that to me. Now, you've got a guy there who's had a lot of time away from cricket. So, you have to give him time to find his best form. But again, Simon Dewell did a bit of analysis on telly about the differences in action between 2019 now. And you don't know whether those are deliberate changes in response to the kind of injuries that he's had, the bad injuries to elbow, back, whatever, or whether that's just, natural changes over time as a bowler gets older. But I thought his kind of arm looked a bit lower and there wasn't quite that snap there. And I know he came back and he was trying to bowl a few cutters and leg cutters and stuff, but he got punished, didn't he? 49 from 5 at a crucial moment when when Butler kind of threw in the ball and said, right, we need to try and close this game out. And then so that you had Archer and Wood coming in, bowling very quickly. The dew had fallen, the ball skipping on, and it actually looked like Inglis Maxwell enjoyed that pace on the ball. So it's not so much the balance, but the nature of England's attack, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, really. I agree with everything you said there. They're all right arm. I'd like the variation. Obviously, Australia had 2 left armers. I think having a left armer would be helpful. Having someone with different skills as well. As we started this podcast, we talked about the different conditions and in this tournament. and you need different skills at all these different venues. So I think you make valid points, but I just with that side they have, if someone you've got two fast bowlers with history of injuries, and you have not young, but inexperienced Bryden Cast, and he has a bad day, then where do you go? And I look at England, and I think they have no one in that all rounder. I mentioned Stokes the other day, and people had a go at me saying, "Oh, you're always on about Stokes," and Stokes, that ship has sailed. But I don't think Stokes should come back into this side. That move on. But there are other options to have someone who can bat in the top 7 and bowl 10 overs. There is Sam Curran. So when Jacob Bethel got injured, Sam Curran is someone who can bat in the top 7 and bowl 10 overs and gives you a left arm option. Liam Dawson is someone who can bat in the top 7 and bowl left arm spin and gives you. England have only got one spinner, frontline spinner in their squad. If they win their next couple of games, and it's an if, and they end up in a semi-final against India in Dubai, and we've seen those pitches, they've got one frontline spinner, as Pakistan had last night, and we saw what happened there. So I do think that instead of calling up Banton, whether there was an opportunity to look at a more complete all-round cricketer with a bit more nuanced skill and variations like Curran, or another spinner like Dawson. So I think they are a bit one-dimensional, but that may work. The next game is Afghanistan, and watching how Afghanistan's top order played against the South African pacers, I think Wood and Archer, if they go hard at them, I think that they'll put them on the back foot.
That very, very well might play to England's advantage in the next game. Josh Inglis. I really struggle with that name on commentary. It's a hard name to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
You used to have that with. I remember commentating on somebody like Ajay Jadeja, and I always struggle with that name. But Josh Inglis is a difficult one to say. But I suspect we'll be saying his name a little bit more frequently, because that was a stunning innings. He's had a great month. He got his Test cap in Gaul, less than a month ago. Had a long wait for that. Got his Test cap. Got 100 on debut. First one for a decade, I think, to get 100 on debut for Australia, and played unbelievably, I thought. He's had a fantastic month.
It is. That just seems to be a long line of keeper batters, isn't it? You're watching Carey
what Benedict's like. Benedict, our scorer, who's a bit of a nerd. He sent me a note saying England have played as many wicket keepers in this game as bowlers. I mean, they got Butler,
absolutely,
Salt, Duckett, Smith, who could all keep.
He said, text me saying, if they'd got Banton in, if you play Banton as well, they got more keepers than bowlers.
And they can all feel.
But then you got
Carey
India
showed that they can all feel. They're all unbelievable athletes. I mean, that catch from Carey at mid-on was a fantastic catch to get rid of Phil Salt. But
and India have got Rishabh Pant and KRL, and Rishabh can't get a game or whatever. So we're in an era of incredible wicketkeeper batters. But you're right, Josh Inglis. When we first saw him, and you speak to the Aussie lads around the traps, and they say brilliant player of spin. But I think what he showed, and that's why in Sri Lanka he came in and played beautifully, because you have to be a good player of spin. But the way he played the short ball the other day, and also I was speaking before my 7 million hour journey with Matthew Hayden. I was speaking to Haydos at the game, and he said what he does is he finds gaps really well, and it was noticeable that just when England were building a bit of pressure with spin against Labuschagne and Short, who were hitting fielders, very first ball he came in, Inglis, and Rashid dropped one slightly short, and he went bang and hit a gap and hit it for 4. He hits gaps really well. Short, as you said in your Times piece, short in stat. It was a good day for the short men, wasn't it? Duckett and him. Ian Ward had a good day as well.
I wrote a bit about Josh Inglis in the paper, and there was an interesting comment from a reader, actually, who's called Rupert Jones. I might just read out what he said. He said, "Hi, Mike. It might be me, but I've still not seen any reference to Poole Cricket Club. Poole in Wharfdale, in the Wharfdale Cricket League, I think. My son played under-9s with Josh Inglis and much more regularly with his brother Joe. We're baffled as to the lack of interest in him from high. He captained the under-11s, Lord Taverners, to the league's first ever win. Played up to under-15s before his dad, Martin, took him off to Perth. I think that league, the Wharfdale Leagues, produced a few players. So Harry Brook, Matthew Reevis, Jordan Thompson plays there, George Hill, Will Luxton. So that's the thing that was slightly frustrating from an English perspective. That a guy there who played a lot, was born in Leeds, lived there till he was 14, obviously learnt a lot of cricket. I was looking back at an interview done in your paper, actually, the Daily Mail, where it's only in 2017, where he was still saying he supported England, even though he was trying to play for Australia.
Wasn't supporting England very much the other night. Have you dragged it back with the good people of? Have you dragged it back with the good people of Lincoln yet? Because when someone came up and said they were from, I'm here from Lincoln watching, you went, "It's not exactly a hotbed of cricket, is it, Lincoln?"
Well, people didn't come back with a whole host of cricketers from Lincoln. It has to be said. There was the odd one, wasn't there? I think Butch actually came in. Butch texted me and said, "Phil Neal?" ? But he played for Lincoln City, didn't he, Phil? Don't know whether he's from Lincoln.
He did, yeah.
But he played for Lincoln City.
Don't know. No. Yeah. Well, let's move on. The big game.
Yeah.
What did you make of it? I didn't watch the first innings because I was travelling. What did you make of the India-Pakistan
Well,
game?
it was completely one-sided. It looked very predictable from a long way out. An underpowered Pakistan batting lineup, as it was in that first game, actually, against New Zealand. They just seem to lack a bit of energy and dynamism in the batting. And although, as you say, the scores are a bit lower in Dubai, it didn't seem enough to me. And then clearly Kohli, when he's in a run chase in 50 over cricket, there's been nobody better in the history of the game, really. 51 hundreds is an unbelievable number. How many did you get? One.
What? Did we have to go from Kohli to me? How many did you get?
I mean, that's, he's got 51. And he passed 14,000 runs yesterday, which only Tendulkar and Sangakkara have got past that mark in one-day cricket. And he got them in 60-odd innings quicker than Sachin, and I think about 90-odd innings quicker than Kumar. So, I mean, ODI is probably his better. He's been a great all-format player, clearly, but you'd probably say that ODI is his absolute best format. He's been an incredible player.
Yeah, and you'd have to say probably the best player in ODIs of all time, really, with those stats you mentioned. You'd have Tendulkar in the same conversation. Kumar, you'd have AB de Villiers. There've been some great ones, but he's right at the top of the tree. If you ask India what did they want yesterday, beat Pakistan and get Kohli back in nick. They've got both of those. They look a real machine in those conditions. In any conditions, they are without doubt the side to beat. I feel for Pakistan a little bit. Before the tournament, Saim Ayub went down with that injury. He was ruled out. He looked like he was finding a lot of form and a dynamic player at the top of the order. Then Fakhar Zaman goes down in the first game. So the two dynamic hitters they had before the tournament are now gone. And then they have to plod their way to par scores or below par scores. And when you looked at the two sides when they came up, you just felt that no one actually, maybe a few Pakistan fans, but let's be honest, it just looked like India were going to win and win convincingly. And
it's a bit of an issue for that contest, isn't it? Because it's a highly anticipated contest for all kinds of reasons. Partly, just the scarcity value. They only play each other in ICC events on neutral territory for obvious reasons. But there's such hype around that fixture. You kind of want the cricket to live up to that hype as well. And if you look at the results in the last 10 years, I think they've played each other 9 times in ODIs in the last 10 years. And Pakistan have only won once, and that was in that final in the Champions Trophy at the Oval. So it's a one-sided contest right now. But I looked at the numbers. Since the start of 2000, actually, Pakistan have been very competitive in ODIs against India. I think they've kind of won 26, lost 30, something like that. But in the last 10 years, in those 9 games, it's pretty much all gone India's way with one exception. What about the advantage India have in playing in Dubai, only in Dubai, which seems to me to be a hard to quantify advantage, but an undeniable advantage. They're playing at just one venue. They don't have to travel either between venues or between countries, as a lot of other teams have to do. Therefore, the selection can focus in on the conditions in Dubai, and obviously they'll know where they're playing their semi-final as and when they get through to that. That seems to me to be an undeniable advantage, but kind of hard to quantify how big an advantage.
No, it is an advantage. So the best team in the tournament have that advantage. And I saw a tweet the other day saying Pakistan host nation, India home advantage, and that sort of sums it up really. They're in one place, they're in one hotel, there is no travel, they're in one dressing room, they know the pitch, they've picked for that pitch. I think selection, when they selected, they were very smart. They probably knew what Dubai was going to be like. They picked all their spinners. There was a bit of debate even from India media saying, why haven't you gone for the extra seamer? Why all these spinners? Well, we've seen why. And also other sides that have not done that. Like I mentioned, England, if they do get through to a semi, they've got one spinner. Pakistan last night had one frontline spinner. You could argue when the injuries came, they should have changed that. And I've made that argument. But all the other sides have to pick and for different conditions, Karachi, Lahore, Rawalpindi, Dubai, and then they have to travel and adjust to those conditions. So it is an advantage, but what else could happen? ICC, once India refused to come here to Pakistan, what else could happen? You can't have a tournament like this without India, Pakistan. That's not going to happen. So it had to be in Dubai. And they sit happily and comfortably there, knowing that they're going to, probably play 6 games there, and if they win all those, they'll win another global tournament.
But we haven't touched on another couple of teams who actually looked good in their opening games. I thought New Zealand and South Africa. I thought they put down significant markers in their opening games. New Zealand against Pakistan and South Africa against Afghanistan. Both of them looked really sharp in the field, I thought. And you're gonna see New Zealand today, are you? Is that right? New Zealand today, New Zealand Bangladesh.
Yeah, one of your 5 tips for the tournament. I've got him today. New Zealand. Yeah,
so you'll be with Ian Smith today, won't you?
Yeah, I'm on in first constant. It's Smithy, myself, and
can you ask him if back in the day, like today, where there are too many wicket keepers in the team and he'd had to put his gloves away and field at mid-on, whether he'd been leaping like Alex Carey to pluck that one-handed catch out of the air? Although he was a bit slimmer back in the day, wasn't he, Smithy? He was a bit of an athlete.
Yeah. I will ask him that. I'll ask him on air, shall I? I noticed you had a little dig at him on air the other day. So no, I'm looking forward to the game here. Rawalpindi is another road, really. It's generally a flat pitch. I think 280s around about par score, batting first. They've got a couple of cricketers back in form as well. Tom Latham, I think he needed that 100 the other day. He got 100. I'll tell you who's a good cricketer, Mitchell Santner. I really like him as a cricketer. He's, in an era where finger spin doesn't get talked about too much, but he just has those beautiful, subtle changes of pace without any discernible change in action. He goes slow, quick, good batter, captaining the side. I think he's a really underrated, fine cricketer, and you could sum that up with pretty much every New Zealander you talk about. So Matt Henry, Williamson, whoever, it is. They are a fine side. Bangladesh are struggling. They've lost 12 of their last 13 against New Zealand. So you'd see, as I sit here now, you'd see New Zealand as favourites today. And if they do win, as we said earlier,
Pakistan go out.
That's this group done and dusted. What did you make of South Africa and their strengths? They're missing some faster bowlers, but
they were good in the field. I thought they put Afghanistan under pressure with the ball and with the bat. Actually, they've got Klassen to come in. Just strikes me that their cricket is on the rise again a little bit, and that probably the SA T20 has had something to do with that. There seems to be quite a bit of a buzz around that competition, and it's given the cricket there a bit of a shot in the arm, I think. So they'll be there or thereabouts. As you say, if New Zealand win today, Pakistan go out, which, what are we, 5 days into the tournament? In 1999, when you played for England, you went out before the tournament song had been released, if I remember rightly. I don't think I was part of that shemozzle. But
no, you were part of that. You were part of the 96 shemozzle. I was part of the 99, and you were right. We had no fireworks at Lord's for the World Cup. They were the worst fireworks I've ever seen. And we'd all done this World Cup song or whatever, or someone had done this World Cup song. And it was like a week after we'd gone out of the tournament. Thanks for reminding me of the good old days of England in world tournaments. So, yeah, it probably needs. Last night, it needed a Pakistan win. The tournament, it didn't happen. Today may need a Bangladesh win. What's your next game? I mean, it's like
Well,
3 weeks
you're
away
coming
or
back here up to
something.
Lahore to do the England
Another
Afghanistan.
5 hours with Matty
Yeah,
Hayden to come back to
and
Lahore.
I'm doing that one, and then we both got to go back to Pindi. Actually, we're doing, I suppose, what might become a bit of a dead rubber game if New Zealand win today. We're doing the Pakistan Bangladesh game in Pindi the day after England take on Afghanistan, and then we'll be in Karachi. So we're going to be well travelled. We'll go to Karachi.
I'm going to put you in this. I want this recorded and put out. I'm going to put you on the spot here. We've both gone India at some stage to win this, right? I went Australia 6 months ago before they had all their injuries. India against whom is the final of this tournament in Dubai?
For a while, from what I've seen so far, and this will come back to haunt me after today's game, I quite like the look of New Zealand. I thought they looked quite strong. And you?
Yeah, I think India, the two strongest side. I mean, New Zealand's only played one game, but they won out here before that, didn't they? That triangular. Yeah. So I agree with you, India, New Zealand. So I think we've virtually gone for every team in the past month.
Right. Good luck today.
Right. Enjoy Lahore. Get better. You sound terrible. You're ill.
Full of a cold. There's a bit going around here, actually, as you know. A few of the Hawkeye lads and the directors from the telly went down the other day, and there's a bit floating around. So you're probably just as well in Pindi. Say hello to Ian Smith. Have a good call, and yeah, we'll catch up next week or something. By which time we should know who's in the semis. This time next week, we'll know who's in the semis pretty much. Yeah, and we'll catch up then.